Next speaker is Elsa Albo from FWC.
All right, thanks everybody for being here. Again, my name is Elsa. I'm with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. I'm a biologist that works for them, a section leader. In the past, I'm actually from Texas, and I ran the Marine Mammal Stranding Network there for a number of years and have about 20 years of experience working with marine mammals. Mostly what I do now is on the terrestrial side. But what we've pulled together for you today is just some information that I hope is helpful to you and useful to you in your business. And so a lot of this first session that I'm going to be doing is talking about some of the wildlife viewing, some of the dolphin program that's in Sarasota that would be a good resource for you to check out if you haven't already, their website, and some of the economics of wildlife viewing here in the state of Florida. So in your packages, which I think that Dennis will be putting together for you, you'll have all these links if you don't already, but these are one of the reports that I'll be summarizing very quickly. They're pretty long, 30, 50, 70 page reports, some of them a couple hundred pages. So you're not going to see everything that's in these reports just in this quick presentation. Okay, so the first report was by the Department of Environmental Protection. They contracted a group that does surveys of the human population, and they wanted to look at outdoor recreation in Florida and its importance to Floridians and to tourists. So they surveyed over almost 4,000 individuals, almost 4,000 residents in the state of Florida, and almost 3,000 of the tourists who were coming. And what they found, they asked the question, how important is outdoor recreation to you? The green bar shows residents and the blue bar shows tourists, and you can see that very important was 72% of the residents, and at least somewhat important to another 24. So you can see that outdoor recreation is very important to Floridians and to tourists, which I think that's kind of a no-brainer for all of you guys. But when you break it down into the types of activities, the types of recreation that they like, the bar on the left says saltwater beach activities, excluding fishing, and that's 63% of the Florida residents like to go to the beach, go figure, and do things at the beach, or go boating. 49% like wildlife viewing trips. So this is huge. Going out and doing wildlife viewing is important to Florida residents. You can see fishing is just below at 46%. When you look at the tourists, very similar type graph, where wildlife viewing is, again, very important to 47% of the tourists that were surveyed. A different study, which was commissioned by our agency, looked, and we're going to have a new one, this one's getting a little bit out of date, this was from 2006, actually looked at the number of people that do wildlife viewing in Florida. Then you can see that there's almost 1 million residents in Florida that actually claim to go out and do outdoor recreation in 2006, and about 750,000 non-residents. Specifically, when you're looking at ocean mammals, so dolphins, marine mammals, you had almost 350,000 residents statewide who went out to look for marine mammals. And then very similar amount of tourists who came and went out specifically to go look for those. So these are huge numbers, and obviously they're very important to your industry. Economics is huge, and this is something I think as you guys, as you work with your lobbyists, these are important numbers, and be looking for our latest report that'll come out. Retail sales from wildlife viewing in 2006 was $3 billion. That was an increase of 154% since 1991. Sales tax revenues, you guys, make a huge impact to the budget of the state of Florida, where it could have been up to somewhere around $300 million in sales tax revenues just from wildlife viewing in the state of Florida. And again, all these reports are online, and you should be getting the presentations too. So shifting gears a little bit, another study that was commissioned, this one by National Marine Fisheries Service, was looking specifically at the attitudes towards feeding dolphins and harassment of dolphins here in the Panama City area. So this one is actually really local and confined to Panama City. And their goal was to look at public awareness. They've done a lot of public outreach and campaigns here in the area. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a billboard out talking about feeding dolphins was illegal. That was for a couple of years ago. And so they've tried to get some awareness raised in the area. And They contracted a company who surveyed 205 of the local Panama Cityans and 171 visitors, as well as 89 water-related businesses. So maybe some of your companies participated in this survey. This was conducted in late 2010 through the middle of 2011. So I'm just going to hit on a very few of the results in the study, and I hope that you'll sort of see these messages that are coming through here from this. You can use some of these messages in your business and as you're thinking about how to grow your business or even just to operate your business. The large majority of all three groups that were surveyed, the residents, the tourists, and the businesses, said that they were concerned about protecting wild dolphins. I think most people care about the wild dolphin populations. Most of the residents and the visitors that were surveyed said they were really not interested in feeding dolphins. That wasn't something that was anything that they were really interested in doing. 55% of the businesses that were surveyed said that they were aware that feeding is illegal, but of that 55%, 40% of those said that it wasn't harmful to feed the dolphins, even though they knew it was illegal. So there's a little bit of an education disconnect there that we need to work on, and it'd be great if you guys can help spread the word just among your industry. Some more results from this study was that when they surveyed the tourists and the residents, they were asked what factors would be most important to them in helping them decide which dolphin-friendly business to go and support, to go out with, to go look at wild dolphins. And what came back just above everything else, above cost, above location and distance to get out to the water, was education and having educational information provided as part of that tour. So this was something that, and I think this is a message that you guys can take back to your businesses. On the other hand, when they surveyed the businesses, only about half of the businesses said that they informed the visitors about what it is to protect, how to view dolphins without disturbing them. Only half of them do that all the time. 2/3 of them said they do it some of the time. So again, just a few things to be thinking about in your businesses. There's a ton of great information in that report. It is a 200-something page report, but there's a 15-page executive summary, and it's pretty easy to read. So I encourage you guys, if you're interested at all, again, I think there's some real nuggets in there that can help you target your business and some of your messages as you're advertising. That sort of leads me just to sort of some food for thought. I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but there's a lot of changing views about natural resources, including wild dolphins, and how are we going to manage those. And this, to me, is phenomenal to have you all here. I count at least 35 people in this room, because it's going to take, government cannot come in and wave a heavy stick. It's going to take the community wanting to work together to solve these problems. And so I think it's great that you all are here and helping to figure out how we work with our marine mammals and preserve them in the future for our grandkids. Yes.
Now, I know this doesn't pertain to what you're talking about, but I have a question. When you're around dolphins, reaching out is harassing the dolphin. But if the dolphin approaches you, what should you tell your client to do in that instance?
I think that law enforcement is going to talk more about those types of things as they get up here in the next presentation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I want to tell you a little bit about a fabulous, phenomenal research program that has been going on in Sarasota since 1970. And some of you may have heard of Dr. Randy Wells. He's been down there. He's part of the Chicago Zoological Society, and he's also affiliated with Mote Marine Laboratory. But he's had a presence down there. He's kind of one of the beginning founders of marine mammal dolphin biology and figuring out how to study wild dolphins. And so they have this great program. I encourage you to Google it up and take a look at their website. It's pretty easy to navigate. Their research program includes, and this is part of some of the baseline foundation information that we have now on marine mammals and what works for them and what doesn't work comes from this program. They've done, they do dolphin rescues and strandings. They've done a lot of surveys, health assessments, outreach and education, radio tracking, just a whole gamut of information. Their population, because it has been studied since 1970, often serves as a baseline for when there's another event. So we had, during the oil spill, we had dolphins dying near Barataria Bay in Louisiana, and the dolphins in Sarasota served as a reference population of a healthy population of dolphins to compare other populations with. One of the interesting things that they've done over the years is there was an animal, and this is where we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the issues in other parts of the state. They had an animal named Beggar, and you can imagine why his name was Beggar. He begged. He was cited for the first time, or noticed for the first time, in 1990, and he was seen hundreds of times over the years, and mostly he was usually begging for food. They got several scientific publications out of studying him and the interactions that he had with the public, but he died last year, unfortunately. That was a sad day for Beggar. One of the studies that was published in 2006 was, again, by Mote Marine Lab, and what they wanted to do was to see if education, if having a docent out, this dolphin came to the same location, he was there every day. You could go to this bridge near Nokomis, and almost every day you would see him there, and he's usually begging. So what they wanted to measure was whether or not an education program, having a docent on site, would help with some of these bad behaviors that the people were exhibiting around Beggar. So they did a baseline study. The graph on the left shows the very far left line shows the baseline before the docent came out of how the feeding went on. So there was an average of 2 people trying to feed Beggar every hour. Then they put the docent out, and that dropped a little bit to less than 1 an hour. But then after the docent left, a couple of weeks later, you can see that the attempted feeding actually increased. And then the same thing on the touching. Actually, the touching seemed to increase when the docent was present, and then even more so after the docent left.
What is a docent?
Docent is a person, is basically a volunteer educator.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll stand out and hand out educational materials, or talk to the people and tell them what's going on with the dolphin, and pretty much told them that feeding dolphins is illegal and it's harmful to the animals and that sort of thing. So they concluded from this study, they came up with some recommendations for the National Marine Fisheries Service on what could be done. They did say that education has been successfully and widely disseminated. In some cases it had limited effect. Many of the people that were out there feeding acknowledged to the docent that they knew that feeding was illegal. So they recommended increased law enforcement. Obviously you can't always increase law enforcement. There's got to be some other avenues. Another study was done 2 years ago, the year before Dolphin died, where they documented, they looked at 100 hours. They followed Beggar around over the course of a couple of weeks, I believe, and they documented in 100 hours 3,600 interactions between Beggar and humans. So that's a pretty high number of 36 interactions of that dolphin per hour with the humans, or up to 70 an hour. And there were 169 attempts to feed him. So again, more than 1.5 times an hour somebody was trying to feed him. Unfortunately, they were trying to feed him, but they were also trying to feed him just all kinds of garbage that he had no business eating. 121 people tried to touch him, and he also bit 9 times in that 100 hours. So that's a pretty significant risk to individuals that are out there with trying to pet or touch or feed this dolphin. So National Marine Fisheries Service, again, is responding to these types of problems through messaging, outreach, education, partnering, and enforcement. They have this great website, don'tfeedwilddolphins.org, and there's a few things that I'm going to show you from that site in a minute. When Beggar died, they did a full-blown necropsy, which is like an autopsy but on animals. And they found that the results of the necropsy, he was a bit decomposed at that point. They were inconclusive, but what they found were a lot of problems with the dolphin. He had healed boat wounds on the dorsal fin, so he'd been struck by boats. He had puncture wounds. He had multiple broken ribs and vertebrae. He was in really sad shape. He didn't have a lot of food in his stomach. He seemed really emaciated and underweight and dehydrated. And there were fishing hooks in his stomachs. He had squid beaks, which they don't normally in Sarasota Bay. The bottlenose dolphins don't usually eat squid, so he wasn't eating properly. He was a mess. And that was most likely a result of those interactions with the humans. So again, this is from don'tfeedwilddolphins.org, the National Marine Fisheries site. Again, reminding folks that dolphins are hunters, not beggars. And unfortunately, when they start begging and people start feeding them, that disrupts their normal behavior and they quit hunting, and then they're not eating a proper diet, and if the food goes away, they may starve. They may starve anyway because they're not eating what they're supposed to. They can get really close to boats. Again, we've seen lots of, and we may see some more later today, or you can find them online, some really ugly injuries with lacerations from boat propellers. You all know what the manatees look like. Dolphins get that too. You just don't see it as much. And there's been all sorts of injuries that have been documented related to feeding wild dolphins. There's been a couple of cases on that Sarasota site that were demonstrated that the calves were following the mothers and begging, and there's at least 2 cases where the calves died before they were 4 years old. Those were the ones that were in that begging mode. Again, you know, the human side of things. If you don't care about dolphins, which hopefully everybody does, it's the human side, and your passengers, your customers. These guys have 100 shiny, sharp, conical shaped, very pointy teeth that do not, they don't miss, and they don't feel good. I've been bit by these guys before when I had to work with them in captivity, and it's not fun. So again, just thinking about attitudes of dolphins. People feed the dolphins, and that results in dolphin behavior changing. You know, they're approaching the boats, they're begging, they're stealing fish, they're going to get chopped up by the propellers in many cases, change their behaviors. And what we've had around this area, even our major, he may tell you some stories about it. When he goes out and goes fishing, even offshore, he's got dolphins pulling the fish off his line. And that's cute for a while, but then when you're not getting your fish on the boat, that gets really annoying, and then that can become a problem too, and that the boaters and the anglers really begin to despise the dolphins. So I don't think you're going to be able to hear this, but I would encourage you to go to don'tfeedwilddolphins.org. This was a PSA that NIMS put together about Beggar.